So Scott and I work in the microscopy suite located in Beckman, where we have a lot of different types of microscopes that people can use to image their samples. This is just we're using a scanning electron microscope, where we use a high-powered electron beam to image the surface of the samples. So we have the insects sitting on a metal disc, an aluminum disc, with carbon tape on it. And if they're small enough, we just stick them straight onto the carbon tape. If they're bigger, sometimes you need a little bit more stickiness. So I'll use some silver paint to help stick a little bit better. It's like glue. And then we coat them with gold palladium to make them conductive for the electron beam. So that's why everything looks kind of silver. We can also get x-rays from imaging, where we can find out what kind of elements are in samples.
So this is an image, not a very good image. This is an image of the inside of the chamber. And this little aluminum plate that we're looking at, and then there's some other little aluminum plates next to it. So this is what it looks like from the side. The cone on the top is where the electron beam is coming from. And then that little thing on the left is a different kind of detector. And then if we go here, we have a picture that we took before the session that tells us where everything is. So this 1 3/4 stub has all of these critters on it, sometimes some of them that we haven't labeled. And then we can see a 1-inch stub, and then we can see a little 12mm stub that has some fleas on it. And then we can go back and look at this, which...
This is a bulby.
So we're looking at its tip of its abdomen to see the stinger. And it looks like the stinger is there, but it looks like it got kind of smashed a little bit. And sometimes we see these really bright things that we can't change the brightness. They're charging up with electrons because they're not grounded very well. And so this one part of the abdomen doesn't look very good because it's charging up with electrons, and the electrons are not able to go to ground.
So all of these insects that you see today are coated with a very thin layer, about 10 to 15 nanometers or something, of gold palladium to make them conductive for the electron beam that we're using to image. If the sample is already conductive, then we won't be coating it with the metal. Without the coating, the contrast would be all over the place if we try to image.
So if we were looking at clean metal, we wouldn't have to coat it because it's conductive. But if we're looking at insects, lots of other things are not conductive, so we need to coat them with gold palladium. And then also we will sometimes take some silver paint and stick that on an edge of one of the insects so that there's a continuity between the gold palladium coat that's put on the insects and the carbon stub that the carbon sticky tape that's sitting on a metal stub below it, so it makes all of the electricity go to ground so it doesn't charge up. Oh, so pretty. Do we have questions? Anyone missing questions?
Conductive to what?
Well, we need to go, the charge needs to flow across the sample and go to ground, or else it will be isolated, and if it's isolated, then it's just going to glow because there's nowhere for the charge to go. So now I wondered if this was a bee or not, and now when we look at these little CD, only bees have branched CD like this. So we know that we're looking at a kind of a bee.
How small are they?
What was that?
How small are they? Are they microscopic?
The bacteria? What specifically?
So you can see at the bottom of the screen part of the, where I think if you can see the whole screen, you can see where it says 50 micrometers on the bottom of it. So that's like a 200th of a millimeter. And so this is 100 microns is a 1/10 of a millimeter. So this is the scale on this. So the dimensions of this is probably 80 or 90 micrometers in diameter, the antenna is.
Here's a millimeter on the scale bar.
So now we're looking at the head, and the head looks like it's about 1.4, 1.3 millimeters across.
Here's another question.
Can it hurt someone, the bug?
Can they hurt someone? They can sting, but it usually doesn't hurt you for very long, unless you're allergic to it. And it's really sad for bees because bees will lose their stinger and die when they sting somebody. But they're just trying to protect themselves.
What, if you were pulling back out of it, what were those, I guess, tree or stem-like things that seem to be on the body and other parts?
So those are called Cate, which is S-E-T-A-E, and a single one is called a seta. And they are just small things like this that we're looking at on the screen right now that's a little bit out of focus. And those are sensory for touching. They can tell when something touches them. An insect can tell when something's touching those little Cate. Now we go and we look at what you were talking about. These little branched Cate, they probably will blow around a little bit in the, when the bee is flying, so the fly can, or the bee can feel outside of its exoskeleton when they move, when the wind hits them or the wind hits them from flying. Another thing that we think that they may do is help create an atmosphere around the insect that keeps the insect warm. So there may be some, because you have this sort of like forest that's growing on part of the insect, and that may help it regulate its temperature. It may help it keep it from getting too cold, for example. Because they're cold, they're not like us, where we have hot blood going through us. They have instead hemolymph, and it's not really blood, it's just a fluid that's on the inside of the body called hemolymph.
And where do you normally get this information from?
Where do we normally get the information?
We know a lot of entomologists, so we talk to the entomologists, and we've been doing this for more than 20 years too, so we know, or we feel like we know a little bit about this. And then we also take advantage of the entomologists to help us. Tomorrow we're going to be doing the same thing that we're doing now, and we're going to have an entomologist, like a real entomologist, with us. And he's a guy who studies trap jaw ants, for example. And when you talk to the entomologist, it's really a thrill because they know so much more than we do about this. So we are microscopists and we don't look at insects all the time. But we are really lucky to be able to work with people who do really, really cool stuff. And we just get to help them work on what they do. So we help them set everything up so they can use the microscope, for example.
We're getting more questions.
What animal is this? I don't know what animal this is.
The bee.
The small one.
Yeah.
A bee? Oh.
And we can tell that it's a bee because when we look at those little hairs that we saw on its head, if those hairs are spiked like little trees, only bees have those kind of hairs. Although we're not supposed to call them hairs, they're called setae.
You can see that the images are in black and white. The electron beam does not image in color. If we're not using light, we're using electrons to image, so we're getting a signal back from those electrons. We can falsely color afterwards with something like Photoshop. A lot of the electron images you might see in like textbooks, they're usually false colored afterwards. Anything else to add with the color? Okay, we have some other questions, possibly.
On the hairs, like, what is the hair connected to on the
The
body?
hairs go through the exoskeleton and they're connected to nerves underneath that will help them, they're connected to the nervous system. And
So, like, are they almost a cat has whiskers, and whenever the whiskers touch something, it senses it? Is it like that, but way smaller?
it is kind of like a whisker. Yeah, exactly. It's like a cat's whisker, right?
That's right.
What type of bug are we currently looking at, and the one that we were looking at? Do you know what type of species they are?
I think this is a leafhopper.
This one, is that the one you wanted to know about?
Yeah, it's hard to tell. It's kind of all bent around. But now when we go up close on the eye, and it's not in focus right now, we can see that it's a leafhopper because it has these like really small things on it called brachiosomes. Can you see them now? So now we're looking at the eye facets, and the eye facets look like pincushions and they're a little bit darker. And then the things that are sitting on the surface are brachiosomes, and they're only produced by leafhoppers. And we don't know exactly why they produce them, but they have something called an anointing behavior where they spread these little waxy little things on their bodies. And so you can see they even put them on their eyes. Okay.
Okay, are they born with the, you know, the first bug that you learned about, are they born with the hairs?
Yes.
If they go from a larval stage to hatching out as a bee with wings, then yes, they're born with all of those components. They don't.
The larvae probably have little hairs too.
Yeah.
I have the forks and.
How do they eat? Like, how do they pick up the food?
Bees, I think they feed on nectar. Their tongue to like help slurp it up in a way.
That's right. That's right. They have the little tongue. The tongue is called a glossa, Glossa, and they can suck up nectar with it. Sort of like fruit juice. I'm really excited about this, what we're looking at right now. You can see that it just looks like a big mess, but when we get really close, we can see the actual eye facets, and the eye facets are covered with these little tiny spheres that look like wiffle balls. And it's really exciting. Some of the people that we work with are studying these little things called brachiosomes that that are about 250 to 450 nanometers in diameter. So they're really small. They're on the nano scale.
Scott, what's your favorite bug to look at?
Sometimes it's leafhoppers, actually.
So we're looking at Scott's favorite, probably. I like looking at different types of bees, maybe. Ants can be pretty cool. There's an ant in here that has really long mandibles.
Oh,
I think Scott forgot about it.
but Cate didn't forget. So there we go. So this is Cate's favorite today, or at the moment.
With the bug, with the small bugs, how many, balls, how many of them are there normally?
There are thousands and thousands.
It's a lot.
Yeah, many, many thousands.
Do all insects have tongues?
No, not all of them, but they do have, some of them have sucking mouth parts, piercing and sucking mouth parts. So the things that are called true bugs, for example, like a bed bug or an assassin bug or something, they have something called a rostrum, and it's like a little pointy, like a drill bit thing, except it doesn't turn. And they can poke it into your skin, and then they can suck the blood out that way. So they have piercing, sucking mouth parts, and then some insects have chewing mouth parts, and then some things like flies will have a spongy kind of a mouth part, and it has a liquid on it, and they'll get that liquid on the surface of something, and the liquid will dissolve what's on that, and then they'll soak that up. So they have a sort of like a spongy tongue to eat. And then some insects, like praying mantises, which we don't get to see very often, but praying mantises will actually chew their food. It's kind of creepy and gross.
What ant are we looking at right now?
I think it might be a trapjaw ant because of how long their mandibles are.
Does it
Walk around with their mandibles open until something triggers them to snap their jaws shut. Sometimes they can do that snapping motion, and that'll help them get away from danger, like ant lions. Or sometimes they'll grab onto what they want.
So they walk around with their jaws open, like Cate says. So their jaws are like spread wide open, and then something gets in between there. There are little hairs, and they're called trigger hairs. And when something touches the trigger hairs, the jaws will slam shut, and so they can bite things that way and end up eating them.
Like when you get bit by a mosquito, when it does like the piercing thing, like why does it give you a bump? Like is this something in the piercing thing?
They have little yeah, so they have an anticoagulant in their saliva. So some of the saliva goes into your skin, and that's what makes you itch. And they have a bunch of little stylets. And the stylets, if we look at them, we don't have any that you can see right now, but they're really, really sharp little blades. And I think there's like 6 of the little blades inside their mouth parts. Only the female mosquitoes are going to bite you and suck your blood. The male mosquitoes don't do that. Where's a mosquito? We have a mosquito on here. I just have to find it.
What does your eye look like up close?
Our eyes?
No, the ant eye or the bug's eyes.
So the friends who are having trouble signing in right now, we can
I have a question. Where is the ant? What is the ant doing exactly?
Can you repeat that?
Didn't you say the wild dogs that love you very
You can stay in.
Okay.
My friends, you can stay in if you're having fun, or in buttons.
And yes, they are all dead.
Mosquito
Scott has imaged a live insect before. They can close their breathing ports, which are called spiracles, but imaging them can be tricky because they'll move around and
Do bugs have like air holes in their body?
they do.
spiracles.
They're probably easier to see on the fly, usually.
And do bugs die a lot by bacteria or mostly by how long they live?
The bacteria probably doesn't bother them too much. We don't often see bacteria in insects.
So if you want to go back to the Bugscope, you can. So you can go back to
The bacteria doesn't usually kill the insects.
So this is a mosquito, and this is the base of one of the antennae. The antennae are broken off. So that little hole that you see near the middle is where the antenna was. So it broke off right there. And then you can see that they have little tiny scales on them. And scales on butterflies and moths and small insects like a mosquito, the scales will come off really easily. So if you're a butterfly and you fly into a spider's web, for example, you know that those scales come off really easily because if you rub the wings of a butterfly, you can see that little powder that's coming off. That powder is like these little scales, which is what we're looking at right now. These things that look like potato chips are little scales. And because they come off really easily, the butterfly sometimes can fly into a spider's web by accident, and then when it tries to get out, it leaves the scales stuck to the web, and it loses those scales, but it manages to get out of the web that way.
Wait, why are these pictures in black and white?
Well, one thing is that we coat the samples to make them conductive. We coat them with a very thin coat, about 8 or 10 nanometers, billionths of a meter. So really, really small coat of gold palladium. So if we look at the insects after we coat them, they look silver because gold palladium, the palladium is more silver than the gold is gold, and so it looks like it's really silvery. We coat the samples with those metals because the metals make them conductive, and then they have a very thin coat. It's like painting them very carefully, and it's a conductive coat so that we can see them. So if we try to look at them and they're not coated with something, and they're not conductive, they don't conduct electrons. So when the electrons get on the surface, the electrons need to skitter. They make a charge, and that charge needs to go to ground, or else the samples will be really, really bright looking, and it won't look good for us. We won't be able to get the really good focus that we're able to see. Like right now, we're able to see good focus. Sometimes if we look at certain places, they're charging up with electrons, and we don't get a good image. So you can see this mosquito, you can see that its antennae are broken off, and you can see its proboscis. This is the part that if it were a female, this is the tip that it would, inside has a super sharp part that comes out. But did we answer your other question all right?
Can we do it in color?
The only way that we can image in color is if we had a regular camera and we had a lot of lenses to do that. If we had really good high-powered lenses, or if we used a microscope, then we could see that in color. We're able to see things that you can't normally see with the camera. So we can go to much higher magnifications with an electron microscope than we can with the camera. And we can get much better focus. So now we can see the wing scales on this mosquito has these little tiny bronchosomes on it. And you can see if I go close to it, the image doesn't look very good because it's charging up with electrons. The electrons that are hitting it are not going to ground. So when we use this microscope, it's called a scanning electron microscope because there's a beam of electrons that's constantly scanning really quickly across the sample, the same way that your TV works, or the same way that your TV used to work.
Mosquitoes, how do they know where you are? Like, do they see you, or do their antennas?
They can sense, using their antennas, they can sense your breath. So they can sense, for example, the carbon dioxide that you breathe out when you breathe. And they can go and find that carbon dioxide, and then they can figure out where you are, and they can come after you and bite you.
Could mosquitoes like use their nose to find their predators?
Use what to find predators?
I'm sorry, we didn't hear all of that. All of what you said.
Can they sense people with their nose?
With their nose?
Yeah.
They have, instead of having noses, they have those little setae all over them. So those little spikes or spines that we see, and some of those spikes or the spines or the placoid sensilla that are plate-like, those are sensory. And so they can sense, they can taste the air, and they can figure out which direction the air is coming from, and so they can smell much better than we can. And so that's what leads them to what they might want to be eating, or what they might want to be biting if it's a person.
Is there a limit to mosquitoes drinking blood?
Yeah, they can't drink very much, or they might get too fat and not be able to fly very well. So they sort of have an automatic limit to how much they can drink at one time. It's only the female mosquitoes who bite. The male mosquitoes don't bite, and sometimes they don't even eat at all. The female mosquitoes need to have enough blood so that they can have energy to lay their eggs. And so the male mosquitoes, some male mosquitoes never ever eat, and they don't have biting mouth parts. And the females are ravenously hungry, and they will bite you and suck your blood, and then that blood helps them have enough energy to actually lay their eggs. And then when they lay their eggs, the eggs are going to hatch and turn into more mosquitoes.
So ants can tell where they're at using mostly their setae, which are the hairs, the hair-like structures. They can use those to feel around them. Some of them are chemosensory, which means they can sense chemicals in the air, and that's how they can tell where their other ants from their colony are at, or where previous ants had laid down chemical scents, they can use their hairs to sense where that is.
Are there the little balls on there?
Makes noise. This is a true bug. So you can see the true bug's mouth parts right here. This thing is called a rostrum right in the middle. And then we can see on the left where there's a really bright spot. That's a place that didn't get coated with gold palladium, so it's charging up with electrons and doesn't look good. And then this is really cool what's happening under the rostrum. It has this ridged area. And so you wonder what that does. You wonder if it makes noises with it or what. It has like a little ridge right below its biting mouth parts. And then we can see that also this little true bug has been around a lot, and it has these little pollen grains on it that are really beautiful, like little sort of like 3D Christmas trees. So we are really lucky to be able to play with all these kind of machines sometimes, and we're really happy to be able to do this when you're watching. It's really nice to be able to share this. You can see a little bit of spider web right here.
Do the bugs usually do the bugs then their main diet? Will they?
Did you hear?
What about their main diet? Do the bugs what?
Like, will they eat different things?
Oh, well, bugs eat different things in their main diet.
Probably most of them don't eat. Most of them have a pretty good idea what they want to eat, and they don't eat other things because they probably can only digest certain things. And so a lot of them are going to eat. They're going to eat is more like drinking, so they're going to eat fluids like nectar from a flower or something like that. So the flowers are going to attract the bugs, like flying insects, and what they do is they convince the bugs to come and lick up some of the nectar that's inside the flowers, and when they go in there to lick up the nectar, they also accidentally sometimes will pollinate the flowers, and then the flowers will be able to grow again and go through another life cycle. So different things eat different things, and so you have some insects that like to eat blood or drink blood, and you have some insects that like to eat other insects, and you have some insects that like to eat nectar. So it just depends, and usually they don't really change. They don't.
So how big is the mosquito?
How big is the mosquito?
Some of them are about a centimeter long, some of them are a little bit smaller, and some of them are bigger. Can we go look at, let's go look at it again. Okay.
So the scale bar you can see shows 1 millimeter. Well, there's 3 millimeters. 5. So this one isn't even a centimeter.
Yeah, this one is about, its body is less than 3 millimeters long. It's super tiny. You can see that it has compound eyes, but the eyes are, because the mosquito is dead, the eyes are collapsed a little bit because it doesn't have any hemolymph that's pushing it out and making it swell up. So these eyes are normally like really round, like a basketball. Oh, is it 10 o'clock?
And Eddie, if you have a question, just let us know.
This is not good.
But here's the caterpillar mouth, and you can see the eyes. So you want to point them out. The simple eyes.
Okay, let's make.
What are those spiky things on the caterpillar?
They're called. They're little sensors, so that if something touches the caterpillar, it can feel, because it has an exoskeleton, so it doesn't have skin like we do. It has instead is sort of like a shell. And so the little hairs, the little things that look like hairs that are called setae, S-E-T-A-E, those little things that look like hair are for sensing. And so they can sense touch, and they can sense wind, and then some of them can also smell. And then the little bumps that we see are eyes.
Oh,
Yeah, please feel free to ask us questions, okay?
okay. Okay.
Thank you. See the caterpillar now? I see its little hands. And it has, there's 2 sets, 3 sets. Only 3 sets of hands. No, there's a set. That's
Those are the
4,
grippers.
5,
So it uses those to help grip onto the leaves.
6. Oh yeah, I remember these.
So they're kind of like tiny claws that it uses to grip onto the leaves so it doesn't fall off easily.
Let's go see what this is. Oh, it's so cute.
I thought it was a weevil, but maybe it's not.
Yeah, we think it's a weevil, but we're not really sure. You can see its eye, one of its eyes. And it's a little bit of a dirty eye. And those individual little pieces on the eye are called are facets, like a facets on a diamond. And then this is a wing scale, and maybe from another insect. So those little round things and those little stretched out things that look like pills are bacteria. And the background that it's sitting on is one single wing scale from an insect, maybe not this insect that we're looking at.
So if it is a weevil, they sometimes do have tails. I don't remember if I saw any in this photo.
Yeah, it looks like more like a kind of a weird turtle. I'm pretty sure it's not a turtle.
I have no idea what that is.
Really?
A goiter. All kinds of fleas.
The there are all kinds of fleas, and I don't remember which is which. And so they're all
Like dog fleas.
Yep, dog fleas, chicken fleas, bat fleas. But I got them. I don't have my instruct. I don't know what they are anymore.
Okay.
All of the fleas look about the same, except for the bat fleas, and the bat fleas are like long and skinny. And here we can see on this one that's charging up, we can see the Laciniae. So there really is charging up there. So we'll start finding on another one. So those are the biting parts. This is a baby flea. This is one there looks like little caterpillars. Here, let's go find the bat fleas. I like this. Looks like it has sunglasses on, like it's going to school or something like that.
Aviator.
Placoid sensilla. Yeah, that's close. Placoid means plate-like. Plate. So these are placoid sensilla, so they're sensory. Sometimes it's for water, sometimes it's for heat, sometimes it's for touching. Also, these other little tiny CD are sensory as well, and we don't know for sure what they sense. Sometimes you have long skinny hairs, and the skinny ones, we're not supposed to call them hairs, of course, because they're not mammals. The really skinny ones also are sometimes wind sensing. There's not nearly as many. So these are, the antennae are used to smell or sense what's around them, and so now you can see the whole width of an antenna on this cute little bee.
Most CD are for sense of touch.
Some of them sense water, some of them sense different chemicals. There's an egg, there's a fried egg.
Not really though.
Oh, look. So there's a little pollen grain that's covered up by that glob of some dried film on there. This is the compound eye. And then there are actually like 2 or 3 more eyes on the top of the head, but we can't see them through all of those CD. But it has a really nice hairdo. And we can look at the mouth parts. These are the mandibles right here. And they even have sensory CD on them. So some of those are CD, and they go through the exoskeleton. And some of those little tiny things are called micro-CD, and they actually don't go through the exoskeleton to send any information to the nerves beneath. It looks like there's a knife right here somebody left. That's cool. And this is the tongue. This is actually the labrum, the part that covers the tongue. And then the tongue is right here. It's called a glossa, G-L-O-S-S-A. And it's kind of like, it looks kind of like a paintbrush. And it's made so that it can stick into flowers and get pollen, potentially. And you can even see some little, what looks like spider web right here. It's a flat web though.
Yeah.
Ask Tippy to bring her phone. Oh, and it has like a little hand. So this is a foreclaw on the little bee's hand. There's another claw right there. Let's go down and look some more.
There should be a claw at the end of every leg. Unless it fell off.
So if there were really, really small cans that they wanted to pick up to try to recycle, they have really nice little grippers for that. But the hands, the cans would have to be really small. I suppose also if they were like drinking a Coke or something like that, they'd be able to grasp it really nicely. It worked out. That's cool. Looks like a fly.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to see if we can get a look at this fly. And we can see that it's charging up with electrons. So, but we can see, now we can see its head. And it looks like it's probably a female fly because it has really widespread compound eyes. The eyes are on the left and the right. The things that we see in the middle at the top are broken antennae. Now we can see one of the compound eyes of the fly. And it looks like there's probably a lot of energy hitting it and it's making it hot. And so that part of the eye is moving from the electron beam hitting it. And you can see little seedy sticking out in various places. And those little seedy, those little hair-like structures, help the fly sense the wind. So let's leave that part. Let's go to the other eye and see if the other eye is also pulsing. Maybe it will be a little bit better to look at. In the meantime, we're going by the mouth. And you can see little palps in there, and then this part that's really charging up with electrons that looks really bright. That's the sort of the spongy mouth parts, because flies often spit on their food, and then the spit dissolves the food, and then they can suck it up. And now we're looking at the very edge of the other eye on the other side. These are the coolest. These are totally the coolest.
The antenna still attached.
Yeah.
So the antennae on these are leaf hoppers. They kind of fall off really easily because they're fragile. That's just the base of the antenna there.
And you can see right next to it there's a wing scale from another insect. We can try to focus on it. It's a really flat looking wing scale. Maybe it got soaked in something. And then this is the base, so this is sort of like the pedestal of this antenna on this leaf hopper. So the antenna goes really long. You can see it has a little rostrum, it has a little pointy little mouth. And you can see the edges of the mouth, and then you can see these little cutting, sucking components here. So these are like little knife blades that will cut, like an electric knife blade slides side by side into whatever it is that the leaf hopper wants to bite. So it helps it cut into whatever it's eating.
In this case, for plants, they won't cut into people.
Yeah, they're really nice. They don't eat people, and they don't eat other bugs as far as we know. They're really nice and cute.
So like if you ran your hand over a bush, sometimes you might see a whole bunch of little things jump out. Usually these are what those are. I'm probably everything's glowing.
Oh my goodness.
We just found out Scott's been using extra energy on the sample, so that's why everything's glowing and pulsing and
It's a bad mistake.
usually we'll hit samples with between 5 and 10 kilovolts. He's using 30.
Okay. We're down to 10. I'm going for 7.5. Oh my goodness.
Well, that'll explain why everything.
Well, I got everything set
Well, you got
up.
really good images there.
So now we can see some astigmatism. And so we're going to put a small screen on here. And we can see that it's astigmatic when we try to focus it. And so now we've corrected the astigmatism left and right, and it looks pretty good up and down. So now we have better imaging capability, and we're not roasting the poor little leafhopper. So, kind of like Thanksgiving. And these are wing scales from another insect that are on the leafhopper. So there's some brachiosomes. Those are between about 250 and 400 nanometers in diameter. They're really small. Okay, I want to go look at the Lilly Pollen. So these are little grains of Lilly Pollen that are just lounging around on part of this. Is it a leaf or a petal? A flower petal?
Not a petal, the inside the anther.
That looks so cool. Alright, that looks so pretty. Okay, let's go find something. I bet there's a tick on here.
You would be betting, right?
Alright,
Make that one the active screen.
this is going to be cool. This is like your friend.
So sometimes we'll go to higher energy if we are trying to get like elemental information from a sample. We need to have higher energy to get electrons get knocked out of the heavier metals or get more counts.
We get better focus too, unless the sample's really soft, which these samples are soft, so that was a mistake that I made by being at a high energy.
So conductive materials like metals, you can usually go to higher energy for and not have a problem. But if somebody is imaging something soft like a plastic even, or people have imaged sugars, Even if those are coated with a gold palladium, it's a very thin coating, so it's not always enough to protect the samples from a higher energy.
This is an adult tick. You can tell it's an adult because it's got 8 legs. And you can also see that the tick is corrugated. So it has all these really fine folds because it can swell up many times its normal size, like almost like the size of a grape sometimes. When all of these, when it all has a blood meal and it gets really big. You can see the tick's legs. We can go and we can see if we can look at the tip of one of its hands. So it has both claws and then this little thing right here that looks like a cabbage kind of, that can swell up and swell into a crack so that it can, it's sort of like a climbing mechanism where it can swell into a crack to hold on to. You can see like its little claws, and then you can see that part that swells and shrinks. And then we can see part of the rest of its arm. And this is its forearm. So there's actually the howler's organ is on this arm, but we don't see it. And that's something that helps it sense CO2, I think.
And carbon dioxide from animals like us.
So in this case, so this little thing that looked like a cabbage on the other side isn't swollen up. It's a lot smaller. But it would be really good if you were a mountain climber and you had extra hands, then you could just like swell your hands up into a space to hold on to. If you were a mountain climbing tick.
So this one lost part of it.
Broken.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go.
Especially when an insect dies, its body part gets dried out, so it becomes very brittle and then easy to break. Sometimes we'll break those legs off on purpose if we think they're blocking anything on it. Or anything cool, at least.
So the head of the tick is called the center part is called a capitulum, and this whole thing is called a capitulum. And on either side of this thing with these little sharp spines on it are palps. And when the tick bites you, those palps on either side, where those things that look like eyes but aren't eyes, those will fold down to either side. And then this central part will stick into your skin. And that's why it's hard to get the tick out of your skin. So on one side, it has these recurved spines that hold on to your skin. And on the other side, that we obviously can't see right now, it has these kind of raspers that will cut into your skin. And then this is where it starts sucking blood. So the center part is called a hypostome. So it's sort of like, it means that it's going under your skin. And then you can see little seedy at the tip and little seedy there. And then once in a while we have to look around and see if we see any blood cells, any red blood cells, but we don't see that this tick bit anybody that we know. And then these are just parts of the recurved spines that help it hold in. And you can see there are really sharp spines on the other side too. So that's like sort of like the mouth. Between this top part and the next part down, it's we're looking at the mouth. So it doesn't really look like it would be your friend. When they're small, they only have 6 legs. And then after they have a few blood meals and molt a few times, they'll come out of a molt having 8 legs instead of 6 legs. So then they're grown up.
When insects molt, and this also includes spiders, if they had lost a leg and they have a chance to molt, they can grow back that leg after they molt.
Yeah, people generally don't do that.
People generally don't molt.
But babies. This is an insect, we don't know what it is. It's kind of like really cute, but we don't know what it is.
So go back to Loman. So we think it's probably a type of true bug, maybe, because it has like a rostrum, like a fin do.
So this little sharp piece that's charging up with electrons a little bit, and it's split open because it has probably a sharper mouth part inside that we don't see very well. So this is the rostrum, and so that means that it is like a true bug, which are called hemiptera, which means, I think it means split wing.
I mean, half wing.
Named after Dodge cars. Dodge Motors. The 383.
Cicadas are also hemiptera, aphids,
Bed bugs.
bed bugs, kissing bugs, wheel bugs, assassin bugs. A lot of ones with bug in the name.
That's right, because they're true bugs. Hemiptera are true bugs. So this was
I think it's a rogue beetle.
yeah. So it looks like a little square head dude.
Yeah, the head itself looks kind of like an ant.
It does.
An ant head.
So insects usually have 4 little palps, and so we can see 2 of them, like right here. This is the tip of one of the palps, and it's sensory, and so it helps it taste its food. That's why it's near its mouth. And so these little things right here that we're trying to look at are sort of like taste buds, and there are 2 sets. There's a set of these, and then there's another palp right here that also is sensory, and then these other things over here that have these little chips on them, those are the mandibles. So this is what it bites with if it's going to bite something. It's not going to chew with these, but it's going to bite with these. So it looks like it's been in like at least 1 or 2 fights because they're softened up a little bit. They're chipped. So we're looking at the underside of the head of this rove beetle, and then...
Well, rogue beetles can bite people too.
Yeah, I bet they can.
I know somebody that's gotten bit. It doesn't feel good.
Yeah, we need to get a quick beetle too. Oh, look at its little hands. So this is one of the claws. They're called, so these little components right here, the little segments are called tarsi or tarsomeres. And so because they are not, generally they don't have flexible hands like an octopus or something like that. They have almost like bones, and so if they want to have this movement, then they have to have lots of joints. So those are all tarsi, called tarsi or tarsomeres.
Yeah, on mine it says if you touch them, they can produce a toxin which can cause dermatitis.
The rove beetles?
Yeah.
Huh. I wonder what this is.
give you a rash.
So you can see it's an insect because it has 6 legs. And you can see also that it has like a wing. So that means it's an adult. And once you're an adult, you don't molt again. Once you have wings, you don't molt anymore. So now we can see the surface of the wing. It's a little bit dirty. It has little pointy things on it. And we're not sure what their purpose is, but one thing is if you had like wings and they got wet and they stuck down to something, if you had little pointy things on them like that, it would make it easier for you to move your wing off of a wet surface. If you had something that was like really smooth and flat, you might be stuck on that surface. Now we want to look at a spider, and we can see the spider's eyes. We can see like 6 of its eyes. And then down below, we can see these great big chelicers or chelicerae, and they will move outwards. And then underneath, where we can't see like super well, but they have fangs that are curved inward. And so when they bite their food, so this
It'll move out.
Yeah. When they bite their food, they inject venom in there, and the venom will dissolve the insides of whatever it is that they bit. And there's so much seedy around here, so much hair, that we don't see the tips of the fangs. But you can see these sort of like long square things are the chelicerae, and then sort of right in the middle of the screen are these little curved parts, and those are the jaws. So what's that? What's that?
Those things. Those are the things there, and they are parts of the jaws, right?
And then this is the coolest dude in the microscope today. And you can see it has mandibles, but I don't think that they use their mandibles as much as they use their tongue for eating. So these will open sideways like a gate, and you can see that they have like little bumps on them, like a fork kind of. And then you can see the hinges of the mandibles, like this is a hinge right here. And you can see compound eye in the middle on the top. And then you can see one of the antennae right here. And so if we look up close at the antenna, we can focus on one piece of it, and they have these little CD that stick through there that are sensory. So they could be water sensory, they could be taste sensory, they could be different. And then these other things also that look like little shallow lakes, those are called placoid sensilla or sensia, and the sensilla are also sensory. I'm not sure what they sense with the sensilla or the little CD on their antennae, but they can taste the air and they can smell things. So insects don't have noses like we do, and they have an exoskeleton, and so the exoskeleton protects them like a little shell. And so instead of touching things, like we can touch things with our fingers and we can smell with our nose. And we can tell when the wind's blowing or something like that. But if you're an insect, you're kind of like a person wearing a coat of armor all the time, and so you don't really sense what's touching something that's outside of you. So you have to have all these little CD that help you sense. So this is the base of one of those little CD. And then the blackoid sensilla that looks really cool. So what we're looking at is, this is about 50, this is, let's see. Okay, so this little sensilla is about 8 or 9 micrometers in diameter, so it's about 8/1000th of a millimeter. So it's really small. And you can see where our focus is not so good, so we have to work on our focus a little bit. And there's some juju in there, and we're trying to focus and make it look better.
So juju is just stuff that doesn't belong to the insect itself. It came from an external source, like dirt or dust.
So that looks
Some
a
other
little
debris.
bit better. Yeah. Very, very small. So we can, let's go look at the eye. We'll see what the eye facets look like. So now they're way out of focus, and I focused the wrong direction. So we're going to put a small screen on there and focus on that small screen. And so now we're looking at individual ommatidia. And they also have little CD that help them sense touch or wind. And this one, the electron beam hits it, you can see that it's bending toward us a little bit. So the ommatidia, each of those is like an individual eye. And all of the information that comes from the eyes then is processed in the brain. So they can have, a lot of times flies and other insects like this can see almost completely 360 degrees around them. It's very helpful when your whole life is really, really fast and you need to be able to see really well and see if something might be eating you.
The facets are usually shaped like hexagons, like you can see here, which are the best shape to fit the curvature or something, to fit as many as you can in a curvature.
Yeah.
So, like the honeycomb will be kind of shaped like that. Soccer balls will have those hexagon shapes in them.
Oh, look at that.
Like that.
The mold spore.
So Scott found a mold spore.
So this is about 10 or 11 microns, 10 or 11 micrometers in diameter. Really, really small little spore. And so if we look at, if we're looking for pollen, which we might be able to, we have some pollen on this stage. If we're looking for pollen, sometimes it looks kind of like this, but it's much bigger. The mold spores are really cool. They're really little and soft. And then you can see these little sensory CD that have extra little branches on them. And we're not really sure what, we are not really sure, but some other people who study these things, we're going to have a better idea of what these branched CD do. And usually you don't see branched CD unless you're looking at a bee.
Probably to have more area to have pollen grains get stuck in.
Yeah. So these are the mandibles. So it kind of like has like a mustache on its jaws. So those mandibles are going to open like a gate. And then we're looking at the labrum. So these are these little pieces are sort of folded like the leaves that go around the corn cob. And then we can see the tongue right here. That's called the glossa, Glossa. And so there's a little bit of juju on it, so it's charging up a little bit. So now we're going to go and look and see if it has a stinger.
And let us know if you have any questions.
So we're looking at the stinger of this little honeybee, and we don't see it very well, or we don't see very much of it. We see that it's a little bit dirty, and we know that when honeybees sting people, that the stinger and the mechanism of the stinger will get caught in mammalian skin. The skin is too thick. And so bees can sting other bees and insects and non-mammals without losing their stingers. But if they sting a mammal, then their stinger will get stuck in the skin in most cases, and it will, when the bee leaves the point where it's stung, the stinger and this little pump that's attached to it that pumps all the venom into your skin, that stays stuck in your skin. And that means that the bee, when it loses that component, it dies because it just drains out all of its hemolymph, which is kind of like insect blood. Now we see some pollen. So this is charging up with electrons, so we're going to try to find some better looking pollen. And there's some pollen that's stuck. So this is stuck to the bee's abdomen. And you can see lots of little pollen grains here. So that's about 18 micrometers in diameter. It's really pretty. So I've seen pollen like this described as ragweed pollen, but I'm not really sure that it was. And then there are lots of pollens that really look kind of similar. And then this is what I think is a mold spore again. Mold spores are softer and smaller. They're more mushy. So this is all in the abdomen of this little bee. So it's been really busy. And then this is a wing scale, but bees don't have scales like this. So this is a wing scale from a butterfly or a moth, probably. So it might be fun also to go and look at another, like a whole wing. So Cate ripped this whole wing off of some poor insect that was still flying.
No.
Not really.
I'll let you got a reaction.
Uh-oh. It's a savage. So this is from a butterfly. Beautiful. This is really, really beautiful. So this is just one of those single little shield-like components of the wing. So it's a scale, and if you were to rub the wings of a butterfly or something like that, or a moth, and you feel or see all that powder coming off, what looks like powder is so small you can't really tell that it has a shape to it. You're actually looking at wing scales like this. So now we're looking at something that has about a 2.5 or 2 micrometer distance between the little ridges, and so that's about the length of a bacterium. Bacteria are often about 2 microns, 2 micrometers long. And what's really interesting about wing scales is that They are kind of like those little lenticular postcards that you look at, where you turn the postcard and something moves on the postcard. It has a sort of like plastic lenticular surface on it. In wing scales in butterflies and moths often work like that. They will create structural colors. So a structural color means that it's not a pigmented color. It's a color that comes from the shape of the shape and the distance between these ridges right here, and it may produce a color, and it may produce a color that we don't see also, because many insects can see ultraviolet colors in the ultraviolet, which we can't unless we have a black light or something. So when we see a monarch butterfly, for example, the monarch butterfly looks kind of like orange and black to us, but to another butterfly, it may look red, it may look other colors, because they're seeing these ultraviolet colors that we're not able to see. So humans got kind of ripped off there because we cannot see in the ultraviolet. It's kind of upsetting sometimes, but probably don't worry about it very much. So, it's really, really beautiful. And you can see that they're kind of like those potato chips. So they have these little flying buttresses, like a really old church, that keeps the structure from bending too much. Really, really cool. So, what we're doing when we drive around, we just stop and try to focus once in a while and correct a little bit of the astigmatism that we see, so that it looks really, really beautiful. So what we're doing now, you can see this line going across the screen, and this is how we would take a picture. We just press a button and it makes the electron beam go really slowly through there. And now we get a little bit better image than we're seeing while we're looking while it's live. And we missed all this like bit of juju that's sitting on here too. Definitely.
Nice fat mold spore.
Yeah, it's like a little hedgehog stuck in there. So pretty. So you can see this isn't going to be a good picture, because you can see those lines coming across the screen, and that's because the sample is charging up with electrons. So we're not going to save this as a picture. It looks just fine like this. There's different ways to save these pictures when we do this. And then there's somebody drew some graffiti on here, some really small bug. So hard to tell what that is.
Maybe some fungus. Really small fungus.
That's right. Now what we're looking at mostly is the little double stick carbon. So everything that we're looking at is sitting on a carbon stub. And so all of those little pits in there are little sticky parts of the whole thing is sticky, but it has like these little craters in it, and then everything that we're looking at is sitting on that. Now we're looking at the Weevil again, or what we think is a Weevil. We're not really sure what this is. You can see that there's a lot of sort of juju on it, some kind of film that's on it. You can see that there's a wing scale from another insect on there. Some wing scales are not really pretty, like the ones of the butterflies and the moths.
Mosquito scales, because mosquitoes have scales. They're usually very simple, kind of like this.
They're so pretty.
This one has juju's right on it too.
Yeah. A minute ago or a second ago, we were looking at about 60,000 times magnified, and that puts a lot of energy from the electron beam in one place. So sometimes all that energy hits the sample so hard that it makes it makes it burn or melt a little bit. These are eye facets, and the eye facets are just all covered with dirt for some reason. Now we can see one of the wings. This might be, if that's a hard wing, it's an elytra or an elytrum. So a single half of a wing. So now we're going to go look at the Librarian. So you can see the screen that we're using where we can see what we did, and now we can see where this little roly-poly is. It's so cute, and you can see it has like a little mustache, and you can see these palps on either side, and you can see its little feet. So these are called isopods. Those are antennae. Yeah, I think you're right. I know you're right.
Those are antennae on the side of the head.
And then these are, this thing that looks like a little raspberry is one of the compound eyes. So it has like 16 or 20 little facets of the eye. And you can see that it has little sensory CD right here. So here on the antenna that Cate corrected me. So when you see these little CDs sticking out, this is actually how this arthropod senses whether it's moved its antennae. And so these little sensory features are sticking out, and so it can feel when it moves its antenna, when it's extended too much or when it's closed too much, it can feel that. Because it has an exoskeleton just like insects do. So this is not an insect because it doesn't have 6 legs. And then not all things with 6 legs are insects as well, like the ticks. The little young ticks with 6 legs are not insects, of course. Now you can see its eyes a little bit better. And you can see its legs, their arms. I think there's probably like 9 sets of legs on this. Sometimes there are more. I can only see about 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think there's 7 sets of legs on this. And we can see where they're called isopods. So iso means the same. And so they have these like delicate little pointy claw feet. Like this. So all of the feet are the same. So that's why they're called isopod. They're all of them. Iso is all the same. Like an isosceles triangle. All the same. I'm sorry. So it's so cute. If you have some suggestions, let us know. We really appreciate that. Thank you.